Okay, so we're going deep on self-organizing systems today. And wow, you weren't kidding about a mix of sources. I mean, we've got Eric Janch's The Self-Organizing Universe from way back in 1980.
Right, that's a classic.
It is, alongside some really current stuff.
It's amazing how this idea just keeps popping up, you know? Like, Jansch laid the groundwork, and now it's everywhere. Fields he probably never even thought about.
Yeah, you know what really got me? His point about how we need to think about processes, not just things. Like a totally different way of seeing the world, you know?
It is. It's like everything's always changing and moving. It's not just fixed structures. It's like this dance between order and chaos.
Wild, right?
Totally. And it's not just like some philosophy thing. This is happening everywhere, from ant colonies and brains to like the entire economy and the universe.
Yeah. It makes you wonder, like, is this a basic rule of how reality works? I mean, that's a big question.
It is. Well, I'm ready to dive in. Where do we even start with all this? Well, maybe Jansch and his historical perspective, he traces the whole idea, how it like challenged the old mechanistic view.
Right, right. Like science used to be all about these solid parts, like a machine. But then how do you explain how life develops or the universe? It just didn't fit, right?
Exactly. And Jansch is like, hey, you need a different way to understand this. Like it's something that embraces all this change and how things emerge.
So it's less about the pieces and more about how they connect the processes, right?
Exactly. It's like switching from a photo to a time-lapse video. You suddenly see everything in motion, this flow of energy and information shaping everything around us.
Jansch connects this to Ilya Prigozhin and his work on what he called dissipative structures. Sounds intense. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. So dissipative structures, they keep their order by constantly exchanging energy and stuff with their surroundings. Think of a whirlpool, you know? It keeps its shape because it's pulling in water and energy from the river. Or like a living thing, taking in nutrients, getting rid of waste, constantly exchanging to keep everything working.
So it's like being open to the environment, using that flow to stay organized.
Exactly. And Jansch is like, this isn't just physics. It's biology, society, culture, everything.
So from a galaxy swirling to a new species evolving, it's all this dance of order and chaos, stability and change.
Yeah. That's what's so cool about his view. It ties everything together. Like it's a framework for understanding the world at every level.
Mind-blowing. Okay, before we get lost in space, Jansch uses ant colonies as an example. Like, how can these simple ants create such complex societies?
Right. Each ant has these basic rules it follows, but together they create these intricate structures. It's wild.
And there's no one in charge, right? It's like a decentralized intelligence. It makes you wonder, if ants can do it, what about us?
That's a deep one. It leads us to another amazing example, the human brain.
Oh yeah, we could talk about that forever. We think of it like a computer, but what if it's more like an ant colony, a self-organizing network of neurons?
That's exactly what Andrew Smart argues in his book, Autopilot. Like, forget this idea of a mini-me inside making decisions.
So it's not one neuron or even a group calling the shots. It's more like a symphony with each neuron playing its part.
Yeah, and somehow this creates consciousness. It's pretty amazing what self-organization can do.
So we're literally more than just the sum of our parts.
Absolutely, and that changes how we see ourselves, our minds, our place in the whole thing.
We've covered so much already. But there's more. What about the Technosphere project you mentioned? That sounds like self-organization in action in a totally unexpected way.
Oh yeah, it really is. It takes us to the edge of research in this area, ready to jump into the virtual world.
Lead the way. I can't wait to see what's down this rabbit hole.
So this Technosphere, it was the creation of Dr. Neil Thies. He's a pathologist, but also this complexity theorist, fascinating guy.
Okay.
And he basically made this virtual ecosystem. Like imagine a digital petri dish where you can watch self-organization happen.
Cool. And you said he didn't program in specific behaviors?
Nope, just the building blocks, these simple little digital critters, and let them loose in this virtual world.
Wow. So he made the world the rules, but not how they act.
Exactly. No instructions, just go.
Okay, so what do they do? Just kind of float around randomly?
Oh, no, not at all. This is the amazing part, right? These little things, no programming, they started forming herds, migrating, they even had population booms and busts, like the whole cycle.
Whoa, hold on. None of that was coded in. They just did it.
That's the point. It highlights how you don't need complex instructions for complexity to come out. Simple things interacting, that's where it's at.
So it's not about designing systems to be smart from the top down. It's about letting that smarts emerge, bottom up.
Exactly. And that's huge, right? For AI, for social change, so much.
It makes you think about all the times we try to control everything. Maybe sometimes stepping back is better.
Yeah. Technosphere shows how creating the right environment might be all you need. Set the stage, then let self-organization do its thing.
It's humbling. We're not always in control, but also kind of exciting, all these possibilities.
It is, and it goes back to what Johns was saying. Self-organization, it's happening at every level, right? Tiny particles, huge galaxies, it's shaping everything.
It's wild to think how much order can come from what looks like chaos. Makes you rethink cause and effect, doesn't it?
Totally, like tiny changes having huge, unpredictable effects. That's chaos theory, the butterfly effect in action.
Right, the weather, the stock market, even ideas spreading. We can't always predict or control it. Sometimes the best we can do is understand how it works, give it a nudge, then let go.
Yeah, that's deep. Requires a lot of humility to give up that idea of control.
Which is tough, right? Especially in a world that loves certainty and all that.
It is, but you know what? Embracing this self-organization thing, I think it actually makes you more resilient, more adaptable. When you get how systems change, you can handle complexity better, thrive even when things are uncertain.
That makes me think about how we solve problems, both personally and as a society. Instead of forcing solutions, maybe we need to focus on creating the conditions for the good stuff to happen.
Exactly. Working with the system, not against it. Understanding its natural tendencies and using those to get where we want to go.
It's like shifting from control to collaboration, working with the system.
Yeah. And that can be powerful. You tap into the system's creativity, its resilience.
Like, instead of being the architect, we're the gardeners, nurturing the conditions for growth.
I like that. And it highlights patience, observation, letting go of our fixed ideas.
Okay, so we've seen self-organization in ant colonies, brains, this virtual world, even the universe. What about us, personally? How does this apply to how we grow and change?
Great question. It brings us back to Andrew Smart in the brain.
He ties this self-organization stuff to free will, right? That's a big one.
It is. It challenges how we think about making choices, taking action, ready for a mind trip.
Let's do it. Let's unpack those neurons and see what we find. Okay, so free will, we usually think of it as this conscious thing, like there's a little me inside deciding.
Right, like a mini CEO.
Exactly. But Smart's saying, no, not really. It's more like our actions, they come from all this neural activity shaped by our experiences, what's happening around us.
It's more like our actions emerge from this whole system.
Okay, yeah, I'm with you. But how does that make us more free? I don't quite get that part.
Well, think about it. If it's all this activity, it means it's influenced by our experiences, what we learn, our environment. So we can actually become more free by changing those things, by like setting ourselves up for the behaviors we want.
Oh, interesting. So less about controlling each choice in the moment, more about building the right foundation.
Yeah. It's like proactive personal growth, right? You're shaping the system.
I like that. So instead of forcing ourselves to be different, we make those choices more likely to just happen.
Exactly. You're working with your brain, not fighting it.
This has given me a whole new way to think about change. Instead of white-knuckling it, I can focus on building the right environment for myself.
And that takes off so much pressure. You can trust that the right things will emerge when the conditions are there.
It's like shifting from forcing it to going with the flow, aligning with how things were.
Perfectly said. And it brings us right back to Jench, that process view. Remember, we're not just things, we're these processes always changing and adapting.
So self-organization, it's not just theoretical. It changes how we see ourselves, how we grow, even how we interact with the whole world.
Huge implications, right? It's like this challenge to see everything as connected, in flux, constantly influencing each other.
It's humbling, for sure, but also kind of amazing. Like, we're part of this massive dance of creation and destruction, order and chaos.
And we can choose to dance consciously, to work with the flow, to co-create our reality.
Wow, what a deep dive this has been. I feel like I've had this whole new way of understanding everything.
Glad to hear it. And remember, this is just the start. Once you see this self-organization thing, you'll see it everywhere.
So to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and trust the process. You never know what might emerge.